Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Quorum Podcast. This is where academic medicine meets remote, austere, and resource-limited areas. Welcome back to the program. This is Aebhric OKelly. This week, I am talking with Adam Gent. Adam runs the Real First Aid training company in UK, and he has been publishing articles on first aid and how to be better at what he does. Adam, it's been ages, mate, and I'm delighted to get you on. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Aebhric. It is a real pleasure to be here. I've been following your work for so many years. It's, as I said, it's like the longest Tinder flirtation ever. But we're finally making it happen, so it's really good to be here. Thanks, Aebhric.
Tell us about yourself. Who are you? What are you doing? And why are you doing so well at the basics?
Well, why am I doing so well? I'm doing well. I'm doing all right. So I own and run a training company based in West Wales, but we deliver training all over the world in predominantly first aid and responder level training. So up to your FPOS, FREC sort of level training. And I got into it through a very circuitous, sinuous route. It was never my plan when I was 16 in my careers guidance lessons to dream of running a first aid training company. But here we are. And I suppose the real motivator was just to do it well. I'd had quite a lot of training, first aid training in the past. In a previous life, I was an outdoor instructor, and I had to do a lot of first aid training regularly to do that. And the majority of the training that we received just wasn't appropriate. It's very office-based, photocopier-related first aid incidents that just didn't apply at all when you're, working with groups in the middle of nowhere, hanging off the rock or kayaking down a river. So, I wanted to do it well and do it better.
So, what got you into it? You didn't start off as a medical professional. What made you interested in the FREC, the REC, the first aids?
Well, I didn't start it at all. So I was an outdoor instructor for a while, working predominantly with young people with challenged behaviour, and in that industry, there's a real apartheid. You've got really good climbers, and you've got really good paddlers, and they tend very much not to mix. And I happened to be really bad at both of them. I wasn't a great climber and I wasn't a great paddler, but I really enjoyed working outdoors with young people. And I went on a first aid course. It was one of the early REC courses, the Rescue Emergency Care courses.
Oh, before the remote emergency care, you were doing the rescue emergency care. Nice.
Yeah. Yes, this was the precursor. And I was taught by a chap called Peter Harvey. Down at Wilderness Expertise, and a lady called Sheena Brown, and this was about 20 years ago, at least 20 years ago, and it was excellent. It was just so far away from any first aid training that I'd done. Very hands-on, practical, very pragmatic, scenario-based training, and it was great. So I looked into becoming a first aid trainer through the REC system, and I ran a couple of courses, for local activity centres, but it was never a career. It was more a bit of pocket money, just running some outdoors based first aid courses. And then I left that industry when I got married, had kids, needed a mortgage, needed to get a proper job, and I became a slave to a corporate wage. And then in 2008, I was made redundant, and I'd been with the company I was working at for less than a year, so there was no real entitlement. And I remember I was stood at the back of the building. I was smoking about 10 cigarettes at once, trying to just drag it all in one go. Wow. Thinking, what am I going to do? I've got kids, I've got a mortgage, I've got responsibility, I've lost my job. And my phone rang, and it was a colleague, a friend I'd worked with in the army, who said to me, "Adam, are you still doing first aid courses?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "When are you available?" I said, "Tomorrow." And he said, "Great." So I went round and with six Rosacianis and some triangular bandages, and I delivered a perfectly reasonable 2-day remote first aid course for him and his team, and I thought, this is it. This is going to get me out of a hole. This is going to get me out of a pickle, and I'll do this for 6 months, until a proper job turns up. But but of course, this was the 2008 recession, and no proper job did turn up, and that was 15 years ago. And I've given up looking for a proper job. So it very much grew out of necessity. And I generally thought that I'd be doing it, for about 6 months, and I'd go back into the corporate work I was doing, and got more work, and I thought I'd just be teaching outdoors guys, climbers, paddlers, people in the outdoor industry, some remote first aid stuff. But that, in hindsight, was rather naive, because the outdoor industry in the UK is a tiny, tiny market. And through word of mouth, I ended up delivering courses for people who work in higher hazard industry, sort of construction, oil and gas. And while it's a world away from the outdoor sports, there's a lot of similarities in those high hazard environments. Indeed. Where you've got a greater likelihood of injury or illness because of the nature of the activities you're undertaking. The severity of that injury or illness is going to be greater because of the nature of the activities you're undertaking, and probably the geographical location you're operating in. And you've got that consideration of extended care. You've got to look after a casualty for a longer period of time, because you won't get an ambulance in 15 minutes. And so, whilst the scenario, the remit of operation is different to whether you're paddling down a river, or you're looking after the safety of a film crew in the jungle, or working on an oil rig, there are commonalities that conventional first aid training just doesn't take into account.
So you have created a job for yourself out of necessity, but you also you're different. So what is a catalyst for you? You have a fire in the belly for this. I see it, and it's you did this yourself, was it? I mean, how did you go from working in corporate to creating this niche of excellence?
Well, that's extremely kind of you to say that. But you are right. Necessity is the mother of invention, and while I was an outdoor instructor, I did think, it'd be kind of cool to set up a first aid training company. But when you've got a job and you've got a mortgage, you've got kids and responsibilities, the last thing you do is give up a job, give up that security to do something new. So I didn't do it when I wanted to, and that sort of necessity came from having to do something. And you look at things differently when there's a necessity, when there's an obligation. So I had to make this work. And you make very frugal decisions, when you don't have that luxury of funding or a second job in the background to keep the bills paid. So the business aspect of it was very purposeful. It just had to work. And I remember when I started doing this, I would just be driving up and down the country, back-to-back courses, because I had bills to pay. And I see on Facebook and LinkedIn, on forums, people saying, so I'm a first aid trainer. I'm looking for work, willing to travel 20 miles. And you think, man, if only all my work was in 20 miles, it just doesn't happen. And so the business aspect of it was really born out of necessity. But there was also, there was possibly a bit of arrogance in wanting to do it differently, because, whether you look 25 years ago or you look now, the UK does not need another first aid training company. It is a saturated market. It's absolutely saturated. And one of the reasons it's saturated is there's very few barriers to entry. So if you do a 3-day first aid at work course, and then you do a 5-day level 3 award in education and training, you can now go and teach the course you've literally just qualified in, which is ridiculous. There's no other industry where that would happen. If you had a GCSE in maths, you cut and do a 3-day EAT course. You can't then teach GCSE maths. So there's surprisingly few barriers to entry. There's lots of people who want to do it because it looks like easy money. And if you're supporting a pension or you're doing it as a bit of a hobby, then it's pretty good beer money. But to make it a successful business, you have to sell your soul to working all hours God sends, answering the phone whenever it rings, and just being prepared to say, yes, I can do that. Because you have to make it work if you're going to do it full time. I get quite angry about that. But doing it differently, I think is probably part of me wanting to be different and standing out, because I can't compete against people with no massive marketing budgets. So I thought, how can I do it differently? And I looked at how training is done. If you look at your conventional training methodologies, and I thought it just doesn't work. Training people with no PowerPoint, and largely without trying not to get what's the word I'm looking for, evangelic about it. Most lower end qualifications up to sort of level 3, level 4 really don't educate, in my opinion.
I agree. I found similar problems. I was a rec instructor for the remote emergency care, also through training expertise. That was 08, and I was running remote medicine Ireland at the time, and I was running these in Ireland, and right. I couldn't compete because these yokes would come in who were first aiders themselves, and they would run a course for super cheap because it was themselves and 24 students, and I refused to do this. I can't, 1 to 4 is maximum for me. If I have more than 4 people that I'm teaching, you lose out on that ability to provide excellent care. So I wasn't able to compete as a rec instructor, so I had to, and I also kind of got angry as well, and that kind of cultivates the fire in the belly for you as well. And so I said, I'm just not going to compete with these guys. And most of my rec graduates were like, we want more. And so I started focusing on the Rec 4 and then the remote EMT, and then my remote EMT graduates were like, we want more. So we started running paramedic courses there in Ireland, and that's how I got past that hump. But I have to give yourself credit. You didn't. I gave up on the Recs and went to more advanced. You didn't, and you won. You are able to create excellence in a market where you have yokes out there who have 2-day rec training and turning right back around and teaching a rec toque with 1 to 24 ratio with a manky bandage and maybe one defib. And how did you do that?
It's preposterous. Well, I've made it work for me, but I haven't really. I don't think made a dent in the market, because there will always be that competition, and individuals can make it for themselves if they're willing to go out and work really hard for it, because to maintain your own standards, and think, how can I do something differently? What's going to people coming back? How am I going to get into places where other people can't get to? Because there will always be those people who will offer a substandard course for less. And to be honest, most people who do a first aid training course, most people, by and large, the vast majority, do a first aid training course because they need to. It's an obligation. First aid training for the vast majority is a legislative hoop that they've got to jump through. It's a box they need to tick to satisfy employment legislation or licensing. So most people don't really want to be there. And if they do have to do something, they're going to do it as cheaply and as quickly as possible.
Just get the piece of paper.
Yeah, sure. And so, you'll also see not just your 1-day first aid courses that people are selling at 20 quid a pop online, but you'll see regulated qualifications like FPOS or FREC that are being offered in 3 long days for 300 quid. And let's throw in paediatric first aid and some hastily bastardized MIRA course. And if you're the unassuming consumer who thinks, well, I've got to do it anyway, I'll get loads of bits of paper for 300 quid. It'll take me 3 days. I'm just going to smash that out. And because you don't have much frame of reference, you're happy with that. Yeah, how was the course? Yeah, it was great. And what was good about it? Oh, it was really cheap. Did it in 3 days, and I got my FPOS. So changing that culture, that is the challenge. Making it desirable, making it so people go, oh, so I did this course, it was mind blowing. I went there thinking I had to do it, and I came out and I learned loads. I didn't realise how much I could learn. That's the challenge. That's where I think the magic happens.
And you create an interest in them, so they're there just to get the tick on the box, and they're like, I'm actually
Yeah,
in on this. I remember
yeah,
one of
yeah,
my first paramedic students, Adrian Spillett. He came in for a wreck. He's like, I got to do this because I need my cert for the mountain rescue or something like that, and he
yeah,
finished the wreck, and he's like, I want more, I want more, I want more, and then he wound up being on our first paramedic cohort in 2013, I think it was, because he didn't know he liked medicine, and then he got to see it done with a bit of passion and a bit of, I don't know, applicability instead of death by PowerPoint.
yeah,
And I remember teaching for other organizations where they just wanted me to do PowerPoints for 5 days on a offshore medics course or something. It's just mental. I couldn't do it. And I see the
yeah.
same in yourself.
Well, we have a mutual friend, Ragnar,
Hmm.
Ryan from British
Yeah.
Rescue Group, and it was a similar story. I met Ryan a few years ago. He'd done his IHCD, his ambulance technician, but he needed FPOS for work. He was doing contract working in the Middle East, and he came on this course. So he'd done it before. He just needed that FPOS tick in the box, and we got on really well, and he really enjoyed it. And it was that kind of, I didn't realise I like this. I didn't realise that I can do this. And then from me, he went and did his offshore medic, and then I think he went to you to do his
Hmm.
paramedic, and now he's a physician's associate
Nice.
working in hospitals.
Nice.
And you think that's
Yeah.
incredible. It's that finding something you like and selling it as something that's interesting, rather than just, right, lads, gather round. We're going to smash this PowerPoint out as quickly as possible, and then you're going to get your first aid certificate.
So one other thing that really impresses me about yourself, mate, is your writing. So you are putting out articles that are publishable. I mean, you have references, and it's all science based. We use some of them with your permission on our field guide,
Yeah, of
and it's
course.
on some of our lectures at the degree level. You are writing content that is very much applicable for the paramedic, and you just keep pumping them out. Just before we chatted, I went again on their website, and you saw years worth of scientific writing. Where did that come from?
Well, sure. In school, I wasn't particularly academic. I'm a little bit dyslexic, and I kind of was dragged through school and kicked through the education system. And I went back and did a PGCE when I was older. And then I realised that I needed to learn how to learn, because school didn't teach me how to learn. School just threw knowledge at me, and most of it just fell, just slid off me like Teflon. So there's teachers that throw knowledge at me, and I'm like, yeah, no, don't get it. And then when I went back to do my PhD when I was in my early 20s, it was something I wanted to do. So I had the intrinsic motivation, and that's when I first learned how to learn. And it's not at all how conventional secondary education is
Hmm.
set up for. Um, and that's when I learned how to properly reference, articles and things, and how to read an article, how to access a scientific article, and especially if you don't find reading particularly easy. Um, that was a bit of a moment. And so then I realized, actually, I can extract. There's loads of information in this library that I can extract. I now know how to find it and what to look for. And that sort of taught me how to do that scientific research. But I had to go back as an adult. It didn't come sort of innately from within as a child in the UK education system. One of the things, I don't know how family friendly the show is, but I've got this phrase, and I use it on every course. And basically, people talk shit, and they do it. They do it all the
Hmm.
time. And what really grips me is the amount that is just repeated on every first aid course, and it's just not
Hmm.
true. There's zero evidence behind it. Elevating limbs. Aspirin thinning the blood. Finding needles in pockets. When you're doing a check for damage. Um, And so that was like the early stuff that came to mind. I thought, why am I teaching people this? Early on a basic first aid course, I'm teaching because I was told it once. There's no evidence it happened. And then over the years, as the courses I've started running have become more advanced, and the people I've been exposed to have been more questioning and more inquisitive, you've realised actually so much stuff that has been taught historically is just these historic anecdotes that are just handed down through generations. And as well as people talking shit, the antithesis to that is you've got to have the right to be right. You can't just say, no, that's wrong, because you could also be talking shit. You've got to have the right to be right. And so when anyone now says, oh, well, we do this now, oh, really? And in my, either verbally or subconsciously, I'll be thinking, show me the evidence. It's all, I get what you're saying, and it sounds plausible, but show me the evidence. Where does it actually say this takes place or this actually happens? And so when you've got a lot of these deeply entrenched heuristics, these just patterns of behavior that people do clinically and medically and also educationally, if you're going to counter that, you've got to counter it with evidence. You've got to say, look, we're not going to do this, and this is why. Or you can do this. I know everyone says you can't, but actually you can, and this is why.
So there's a lot of scientific push for the college, or everything we do, we want to do science-based, but I have not seen that much science push for first aid and for the BLS level. And you're
No,
it.
it isn't.
There's not much out there. And I would encourage you to publish these in journals as well.
Well, that's very kind of you. But you're right, there isn't. There's none. The whole thing about rhabdomyolysis and the current first aid guidance in the UK is still do not remove trapped casualties if they've been trapped for more than 15 minutes. There is no evidence on the face of the earth that rhabdomyolysis develops in 15 minutes. None at all. And there's no evidence to where that advice came from. But it's still taught. The first aid at work course was written in 1981 in the advent of the health and safety first aid at work legislation. So it's 42, nearly 43 years old, and people are still promoting this do not release if they've been trapped for more than 15 minutes with no evidence behind it. No other country has a 15-minute rule. And even in the UK, doctors, nurses, and paramedics don't follow this 15-minute rule. So why are we teaching people this? It makes zero sense. But no one's challenging it. And it's partly because the barriers to entry are so low. So when you've done your 3-day first aid work course, and you've done your AET, and now you're teaching it, what are you going to teach people? What are you going to teach people? What you were told? Because that makes complete sense. But yeah, the articles, I do enjoy writing the articles, but they're incredibly time consuming. So you'll know when business is good because I'm not putting anything out because I'm too busy. And if you see a sudden flurry of articles and social media posts, that's because I'm at home finishing like 12 half-finished articles I've been working on for the last 3 years.
Fair one. I know the challenges of that. My challenge to myself is every Wednesday to put out something on LinkedIn that has good science backing. And sometimes, like this week, I was in London for a friend graduating, and I didn't have a chance. But yeah, the challenge is do 52 a year. It's mental. It's tough. And meanwhile, I'm doing all the other things that I do as a Dean Emeritus, but you are definitely the shining light when it comes to looking at this at the BLS level. And the other thing is you're writing, and I imagine you're teaching as well. I'm sorry I haven't actually seen you in front of the classroom. It must be amazing. But what you can do is find a difficult topic such as rhabdomyolysis, and you're explaining this to somebody with a 2-day first aid course, and they're getting it.
Yeah.
And so that being able to have complex topics and complex thoughts and get it down to the basic level, it's really rare to find. And with my special forces background, we had this saying, what makes special forces special? And it's not jumping out of our plane. It's not like my team sergeant jumped a tactical nuke once. I mean, some of the jumping means like he jumped out of aircraft with a tactical nuke just because the Department of Energy were like, can we jump a tactical nuke? And so we didn't get to do that, but he got picked for it. I mean, this is really wazoo stuff. But Special Forces is not about that. Special Forces is knowing the basics well. And we're the best because we have immediate action drills. We can do that blindfolded. We can do an improvised bandage. We know it, and it's the stuff that you're teaching is what we should know, everyone should know really, really well.
Yes. Yeah, I wholly agree with you. And I think that it's interesting because I'm known for like doing the first aid stuff, but as a medic, I'm not a great medic. A doctor once called me shoddy. I've probably killed quite a few casualties. I'm not a great medic, but that's kind of what I'm known as because that's the industry I'm in. I'm a trainer, and that is what pays my bills. And they're completely separate fields. They're completely separate. And another massive bone of contention I have is that they're not seen as separate. There's this, well, okay, you're a good medic, so you must be a good trainer. And training is completely different. You've got to, as you just explained, you've got to take something that's really complex and then distill it without losing too much credibility to make it accessible and digestible for other people to understand. And then if they want to know more, you've got to have that ability to go deeper into the science if they really want to. And if you can make it engaging and interesting, then well, that's just bonus points. And that's not being a medic. And I kind of like use the analogy quite often of a football coach. And so I know nothing about football, by the way, so don't pick me up, don't give me any pop quiz. But if you think about football coaches, and if you were to ask someone to name an excellent football coach. A lot of people might say someone like Jurgen Klopp. I don't know if he's any good, but a lot of people have said that to me in the past. And he's apparently an amazing football coach. Was he a manager? I can't remember. Either way, coach or manager, one or two. Either way, was he a spectacular football player in his time?
Yeah.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah.
Because what he's doing now is different to playing football. So he's not employed on the basis of his ability to play football. He's employed in his ability to manage and motivate and get the most out of other people. So they're completely separate disciplines. And you find people who've got the brain the size of a planet, and they know this stuff inside out, and they just can't get it across to lay people. Because they're operating at another level, and then they can't kind of distill it. They can't make it accessible. And you see jobs advertised on platforms like LinkedIn for clinical educators, and it'll be something like, they must have 5 years of clinical practice. There must be at least paramedic, preferably nurse, ideally doctor, F-band. They must have PTLS, AMLS. They must have this, that, and the other, and then at the end it'll say must have a minimum of level 3 award in education training. So they're taking on trainers, and the role is a trainer, but they're employing on the minimum training qualification required.
Level 3, yeah.
Which I think is odd, because if you want to pay someone a lot of money to be a good who's a good trainer, then surely you should be employing them on their training ability, not their subject matter ability. Does that make sense?
Does. Like, being a good medic does not make you good faculty, and I've sacked faculty mid-sentence because they were rubbish. So you have to be able to be good at medicine, and you have to be good at teaching, and very few have that.
Yeah. I've written about the Holy Trinity that I look for, because we've got a couple of freelance staff, our associate trainers, and we don't have many, but for a couple of reasons. But I look for the Holy Trinity, and firstly, you've got to actually have done it. You can't be a theorist. You must have got your hands dirty on some casualties. You don't have to be an open heart surgeon, but you must have had some exposure to dealing with casualties. So you can't just be a theorist. You've done the course, you've narrow qualified, and now you're going to repeat the course. So you've got to have some hands-on experience. You've also got to be an exceptional trainer, because that's really what we're being paid for. We're in the training industry. We're not on the healthcare provision industry. And you've got to not be a dick. And it's incredibly difficult to find all three, because I know some really good medics who are just leagues ahead of me. They're doing mind-blowing stuff clinically, but they can't teach to save their life, and that's by their own admission. And I know some really good trainers, but I couldn't put them in front of a client. They'd be like a social hand grenade. And finding all three is incredibly difficult to do. But that's what they're the unicorns we're all chasing.
It definitely is, and trying to get enough of those. Like, we have 17 faculty, and it's taken me 10 years to get to herd all of these cats into one room because of, as you say, the Holy Trinity. They must be all three.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you went on social media and said, "Look, I need a new faculty," you would easily have 50 applicants by the afternoon. But how many would you actually really be confident to put in front of a client?
Yeah,
it thins out. And interestingly, the majority of the associate trainers that we use the majority of them aren't paramedics, because we don't need someone who's clinically excellent. We don't need nurses and doctors. We need really good trainers. And so the majority of them actually have an outdoor instructor background. Because that's what we're employing on. That's what we want. We want people. And because if you can motivate a group of cold, wet, miserable teenagers on the side of a hill who've got no interest in navigating or how a compass works, if you can motivate in that classroom, if you can enthuse and engage, then there should be no reason why you can't motivate a group of adults in a relatively comfortable training environment. But yeah, that's for us is where the magic happened. It's the engagement, and rather than the your clinical qualification.
So, Adam, there's one question I've been really wanting to ask, and I saved it for the last because I imagine it's going to, we're going to bounce this back and forth a bit. But you teach prolonged field care, and you teach it at the BLS level, which is profound. It's so I would love to pick your brains and hear your concepts on PFC for first aiders.
Okay, that is interesting. It's a bespoke course that we've written for BLS. It's kind of like your prolonged field care for first aiders, not for healthcare professionals, and they are completely separate beasts. And I've had a bit of incoming flack for this. And if you put anything on the internet, you've got to expect incoming flack, haven't you? Because you're not teaching prolonged field care. Prolonged field care is nursing. It requires catheterization and medication. So, well, that is one aspect of prolonged field care. But if you are a first aider and you have a casualty and help is hours or days away, well, you still have to provide field care for a prolonged period of time. It's just a different aspect of it. So it's really first is what do we need to consider? What is prolonged field care? What are the challenges going to be? And there's a lot of crossover between the prolonged field care website. That really gets into the weeds of the pharmacology and the nursing aspect of it. And then the stuff that you've done is pioneering stuff that's never really been considered. But yeah, so first we've got to look at what is the context, what are the issues of looking after a casualty. And it's not glamorous, and it's not sexy, and it's not that instant gratification of sticking on chest seals and tourniquets and needle decompression. Some of it is mundane, and it's housekeeping, it's basic nursing skills, things like this. And so we have our own methodology that attempts to provide some grounding for non-healthcare professionals to manage a casualty for an extended period of time, typically in a remote environment. There absolutely is a need for prolonged field care at a BLS level anytime you're working or playing off the beaten path. So we've developed this course and we principally deliver it to discrete groups because of the specialist nature of it. It's kind of difficult getting people to agree on the same date and then committing to it, and then some people drop out. So we're only offering it to discrete groups, people who work further afield. And so the first phase of the training is understanding the epidemiology of injuries and illnesses when we're working or playing abroad. And when people do their initial risk assessment, it's always very emotional. And we think of things like terrorist attacks and IDs and snake bites, when actually the reality of working or playing abroad is it's going to be vomiting and diarrhea. It's going to be sunburn, things like this. And it's putting things into perspective. So what are they really preparing for? And it's usually not at all what people expect. So we go into the epidemiology of the things people are likely to have to encounter. Then we have our methodology. So you are using sheep vomit currently, is that right?
Yeah, Hitman and sheep vomit. And you're using the AFIT arse as a mnemonic.
Well, I don't think I've updated the website because I haven't put our protocol online yet, but I'm willing to share it with you. So it's a methodology. So AFIT arse you shared on your remote medical island years ago. And I think it's great. And I think it's good for the BLS level. I think there's still a lot you can take from it. But I've kind of nuanced it, and also it had to begin with a H. I couldn't have it beginning with an A because after I G get help, then you're into something.
That's why we changed. Yeah.
So we developed HEROTIME.
Oh.
I know, right? So you do your DRABCEFG. G is get help, and then while you're waiting for help, well, now it's hero time, and this is when you've got to step up. So H is hygiene, and this is not exciting. It's not glamorous. It's not tactical or ninja, but it's the nursing care side of looking after casualties. E is for elevation, and we look at different positioning. I'm predominantly the conscious casualty is going to adopt the most comfortable position, but we have a chat around how different positioning can affect, the physiology, blood pressure, things like this, and also know what are the myths around it. R is for rehydration, so principally oral, but we talk about proctoclysis. O is our observations and records, so your history taking, your monitoring, trending vital signs. T is testing and diagnostics. So we look at rapid diagnostic tests. We look at what other diagnostics we can bring. So things like portable ECG machines,
Good.
blood testing, Eldon cards, that sort of stuff. And then we'll have a conversation about telemedicine, because you do not need to be able to interpret everything. You do not need to diagnose. You just need to collect the data and then tell someone else about it.
Indeed.
So
Yeah.
urinalysis I think is super cool. Urinalysis, I mean, pissing on a stick is not at all sexy, but weeing on a stick is not tactical. But getting someone to wee on a stick and just holding it up against the diagnostic table and saying, yeah, I think you've got a UTI. That I think that
Mm,
ability is super cool, and it is easily within the BLS skill set. If you can read,
definitely.
then you can do that. So that's our testing and diagnostics, getting as much information as we can, and even if you can't interpret it, just pass the information on to somebody who can. I is for infection. M is for medication. There's a lot of myths and legend about what we can and can't do, and actually, even within the UK, which is a pretty litigious society, you can do an awful lot with medication.
Mm,
Um, and then E is environmental issues. So that's our framework, and then towards the end of the course, we go into specific skills, a lot of which would have been covered on a decent remote first aid course, but things like the management of ankle injuries, management of diarrhea, clearing a C-spine, wound cleaning and closure, when you should, when you shouldn't. Using SAM splints, you see SAM splints being used all the time, but you also see them being used terribly all the time.
mm.
And using a SAM splint effectively is a bit like a GCSE engineering project. When they work incredibly well, but just taping a flat bit of aluminiumized foam to an
Yeah,
elbow
it
is not
irks
going to.
me when I see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes my right eye go twitchy. Yeah, so that's really my take on prolonged field care. I think there's a significance, there's a reason that whether we should have that skill set when we work abroad, but I don't think anyone needs to be precious about who should be teaching it, who should be attending these courses. If you can add value, if you can make someone's life better, and you're not breaking any laws, why would you not want to help someone?
Indeed. I imagine the lads who's giving out to you about offering PFC at the BLS level, they just don't grasp the concept. So the majority of prolonged field care is BLS nursing skills. And
Yeah. It's really basic.
I would encourage you to continue doing this. And I would say that I'm a critical care paramedic, and I focus on all the cool 72 drugs that I can do. But what am I lacking? I am lacking on the BLS nursing skills, the keeping them comfortable, the turning them, the massage, so
Yeah.
these are things that must be taught.
That's it. And the interesting thing, you said you're a critical care paramedic. Well, critical is cool, and paramedic is cool. Why isn't care cool?
Mm,
It's like
yeah,
everyone to be that ninja. But if wanting to make someone's life more tolerable, more bearable, being able to soft skills like just putting your arm around someone's shoulder and saying, "Do you know what, mate? Everything's going to be fine." Not being afraid to hold someone's hand and just talk to them. They're really cool skills when they're done well, and you only appreciate what they're cool when you're the one who's in pain or is utterly miserable and someone's doing it to you.
so how long is your PFC exercise that you're doing?
It is delivered over 2 days and throughout the course, each candidate has got a casualty. So they meet their casualty, who is actually called Alex, one of our full-size mannequins. So Alex is the casualty. And they meet Alex on the morning of day one, and they're given a bit of a script. So this is Alex, and each candidate has got a different history. So Alex has been traveling in Central Africa, that's the same for everyone. But Alex has got this problem or this problem, and this is their presenting problem, and each candidate's got a different one. And then as the course goes on, they're able to go back, and Alex lives in a tent for the whole 2 days, a one-man tent, and they're able to go back whenever they want and ask Alex some questions. So when we've just done urinalysis, or we've just done ECG or whatnot, they'll go, oh, I'm just going to go and do an ECG on Alex, or I'm just going to go and ask Alex to wee on a stick, or oh, I'm just going to go and just do a malaria RDT. So they go back to Alex over the 2 days at random points, typically after we've just highlighted this might be something you could do. And then they build up this picture, and then by the end of the 2 days, they say, right, this is what I think they've got. I've ruled this out because I've ruled this in because I'm going to go with that. And we either say, yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. It is malaria, or it is a UTI, or it is sepsis, or you're wrong. Go back and think about it. What's led you to that? Where might you be getting confused? So they've got that going on in the background while they're also doing the lectures and the skills session.
That's brilliant. That's a really clever way of getting them to understand the prolonged, the longevity, the amount of time you're going to have to deal with them.
When I started doing it, and it was very kind of organic. We're on like iteration 7. I've rewritten the course manual 8 times now, and I've been threatening to put it into print. It was meant to be. I wanted to get it out for Christmas this year.
As you should.
Well, I'll send you an advance copy, and you can rip it to pieces.
Absolutely.
It looks like I'm now going to say Christmas next year, but it's like you say, oh yeah, I'm writing a book. Oh really? Neither am I. They never get finished.
Yeah, we're in the same boat with a 3rd edition. We're just not getting to it at all.
Yeah.
So, where can people find you? So, if someone's interested in a PFC course focusing on BLS skills, where can they find you?
You can find us online, which is realfirstaid, all one word, .co.uk. Even if you do not want to book a course with us, you don't want to send us any money, we've got a shop online. You can buy some stickers and medkit. Even if you don't give us a penny, there is a whole section of articles that we keep updated. They're referenced and they're out there for the greater good. If there's any article that people think are missing, Adam, you haven't written. I know for a fact I haven't written an article on head injury, which is a significant topic, but there isn't an article on head injury yet. So if you're looking at thinking, Adam, you need to write an article for this, then email us at info@realfirstaid.co.uk. You can also find us on Instagram, Real First Aid, all one word, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google+, OnlyFans. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time. Yeah. I encourage anyone listening to go through the plethora of published articles you have that are all referenced and scientific based. I refer to them, and we use some of your content on our degree programs. And definitely reach out to Adam if you have any questions on what he's doing. Adam, it's brilliant to have you here, and we got to get you down to Malta, mate.
I need a tan. I need to do some learning in a sunny country. 2024 is going to be the year.
Let's get you down. Anyway, thanks for joining the show, and we look forward to seeing what you can do.
Thanks, Aebhric. It's been a pleasure.
This has been a presentation from the College of Remote and Offshore Medicine. If you would like to earn CPD credits for this podcast, you can join the Council of Members. Being a member of the college gives you free CPD credit, free access to our virtual field guide, and discounts on our e-learning courses. You can join the team on our college website at quorum.edu.mt.